a very special Take Control Books celebration. This is MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this show kicks off what I hope will be, if everything goes as planned, a special week with some very special guests and some very special friends. We're here to celebrate an accomplishment, I think is the proper way to say it. So let's do this. Let's first of all welcome Joe Kissel. Joe, it's great to have you as always.
Nice to be here, Chuck.
Next up, Adam Engst is here. Adam, it's great to see you as always as well.
Always fun to see you, Chuck.
And last but absolutely not least, I should have started with her, Ms. Tonya Engst. Tonya,
I'm very happy to be here.
Oh my God, it's been way too long, Tonya. I don't know. You're hanging out with these other guys. It's not good. It's not good. So we're here to celebrate 20 years of Take Control Books, which is kind of amazing because these three people have been very special friends to me. They've been very special friends to MacVoices. I'm honored to have them here to celebrate 20 years of Take Control Books. Joe's, I guess the current, what's the proper word, Joe?
Publisher, sure. We'll go with publisher.
Perpetrator, poobah, publisher. Okay.
I should officially change my title to perpetrator. I like that better.
Oh, but that means Adam and Tonya are the original perpetrators of Take Control Books. I'm not sure they like the title.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start it this way and say, where did Take Control Books start? Whose idea was it, and how did it get off the ground?
You expect us to remember that long ago? And all the details? Actually, Tonya,
somewhere there has to be some corporate records, Adam. Come on.
I believe it was really Adam's idea, specifically that Tidbits could publish some ebooks and sell them very inexpensively over the internet instead of doing the whole, write a large document, work with a publisher, get it printed onto lots of pieces of paper, have those pieces of paper bound and put into UPS trucks and driven all around the globe to be put in bookstores.
And look, they're obsolete.
And this idea was building for lots of reasons. One reason was I had spent the previous summer editing a book about Final Cut Pro for Peach Pit. And the book had to be completed because the new version of Final Cut Pro was going to ship. And yet clearly the author it was not possible to finish this book, and just problem after problem. And so just seeing all the ways that paper books don't work well, I think helped Adam to have this idea. And I know Adam brought me in quite early to help out and edit these things. And I truly don't remember how it was that Joe got persuaded to write the first book.
So it was a little bit of we kind of came up with the idea. It's one of those things where you have the idea, right? You like suddenly the puzzle pieces are available. Like, oh, I know how to make this, and I know how to do that, and we have this technology to connect the two now, and you can take payments over the internet, and it's sort of hey, maybe we could, and so Tonya and I sort of batted around the idea, but we didn't want to write them all ourselves. That wasn't the goal. And so, Joe was, I can't quite remember what we were doing. I think you'd done some writing for Tidbits fairly recently before then.
Yeah, I think I'd done some writing for Tidbits, and I had just finished a big book. This one was, now I have to remember, I think this one was 50 Fast Mac OS X Techniques, and you wrote the foreword to it or something. And I had written a few books by that point, but I had actually, there you go. Look at that.
Hey, is that good or what?
Yeah, wow. That's awesome.
Well, that's like the first time you've needed a book from your bookshelf in the last 3 years.
It's closer than mine is. Yeah, but we knew each other from many Mac worlds and all the things. And I remember I was living in San Francisco at the time, And I think you sent me an email saying, "Hey, Joe, I have this idea. I want to run by you. Can I call you?" And this was back in the days when people still used telephones. So I mean,
with
use
wires attached to them.
for talking on. I mean, what a weird thing. And I remember standing in my kitchen, having this phone call with Adam. I had been laid off from my most recent tech job in like the previous, I think, December or something. This must have been, I don't know, late spring, early summer, something like that. And I was doing some stuff, but I wasn't really making a lot of money, and my prospects weren't too rosy. So basically, I had time on my hands, and I needed some money. And so he described this idea to me, and like ebooks were barely a thing back then. Like the Kindle had not been released yet. You know what I mean? Like this ordinary everyday thing to all of us today, it was barely a thing. So I'm like, ebook. Well, you know what? I could write 50 pages on something. And Adam was like, we got a group together. We got all these people who have all written conventional print books about Apple stuff. And I don't remember exactly who all was in the initial group.
You and Matt.
So I know Matt Newberg was,
and Glenn
Fleischman was Kirk the original.
Yes, because it
Kirk
was
Mac
you
Mark,
with
yeah.
upgrading to Mac OS 10 Panther. And so the idea was that instead of writing one very large book about everything there was to know about Panther, that each author would tackle what would effectively be a chapter.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
A chapter. So Joe was first, and he was in charge of writing the chapter about how you would upgrade to Panther. And then Matt was next, and he would write how to customize Panther for your needs. And then Kirk Mickelhern was going to write about users and accounts, how to get that all working, because at the time, users and accounts was a little mysterious. We Mac users were slowly adjusting to this whole Unix thing with users and accounts, but it was slow going for some of us, myself included. And then Glenn Fleischman was going to write about sharing files.
Sharing files, look at that.
Sharing files in Panther. And so that, and maybe we had some ideas for other things, but that seemed like.
I think we were going to go with that for the time. I mean, and to be clear, what I was just showing here, this is the print version of this. After we said, hey, we've got all these ebooks, we went to our friends at Peach Pit and said, hey, would you like to put it in a print book? And they did, and it was not a huge success. However, the ebooks were a huge success, and that's partly why we did.
To say, we were not planning like a 10-year, 20-year, 25-year like publishing enterprise. We literally thought, because of the pricing and the ebooks, we thought if we can sell 1,000 copies in 6 months, that will be worth the effort. Like that, it'll be fine, because the authors were really just writing what was in essence a long chapter. So they don't need to make that much money, to kind of be okay.
So the money was kind of interesting, the selling part of it, because that was actually where we ran into issues early on. We knew we could take payments, and I was friends with a guy named Key Nethery who ran a shareware service called Coggy, and so I worked with Key to set up a special connection to a merchant account. So we actually had our own merchant account. We weren't working, Coggy was just acting as the front end. That got us a great rate from Coggy because we were going to charge $5 for these. Like we couldn't afford to spend to pay $1 in transaction fees or something. And so, but when you set up a merchant account, they ask you how much money you expect to take in. And the reason is because when people pay with a credit card, they can reverse the charges if they don't like it or they don't get the thing or whatever. And so the merchant account company is kind of on the hook for up to 6 months. That's how long you usually have. And so, as Tonya said, we were thinking, we'll never sell more than 1,000 of these. That would be insane. And so we we said we could maybe take, $5,000 total. And we had, we had 2 books to start. Upgrading and customizing were the first 2. And I remember I actually had to go to a conference about a week later. So we do this, and we announce it in Tidbits, and it starts selling. And it's just like
1,000 copies in a day.
No, well, so I remember this. I remember like chatting with Adam in whatever we used for chat in those days. And he's like, "Are you looking at these numbers?" I'm like, "I'm looking at these numbers." We
got
sold
emails for
1,000
every
copies.
sale.
Yeah. We sold 1,000 copies of my book in 13 hours. And we would hear from people. This was back when you had to go into an Apple store and buy a DVD for $129 with Mac OS X on it. And people were sitting on the sidewalk outside Apple stores before they opened that day with their laptops connected to the store's Wi-Fi, and they were downloading my book. We got stories like this. It was insane. So we sold 1,000 copies in 13 hours, and within 24 hours, we had sold 2,000 copies. And I was just like, I think I have a new job. Holy cow. But anyway, Adam wants to talk about the money.
A week later, I had to go to a conference. Maybe not even a week. Might have been like, I forget what day it was that we announced, but it was like, I don't know, Friday or something, and maybe I had to go on Wednesday or something. But I'm coming back from the conference, and I think this is the only time I've really felt like a true Silicon Valley tech guy, because I'm in the airport in San Francisco, and I forget whether I got a call. I think Tonya called me because our site wasn't taking orders anymore. We'd gotten shut down, and at the merchant account side, and so I'm like talking on the cell phone. This is 2003, and I was not a big cell phone guy. So like the fact that I had a cell phone was kind of cool in 2003. But I'm talking on the cell phone. I'm connecting to the airport Wi-Fi, trying to figure out what's going on. Finally talked to the guy at the merchant account, and making it clear. And he's like, I don't know what's going on, but basically you sold too much. And I'm like, that's not my fault. I'm sorry. So, he's like, I'll do what I can, but I've never seen one of these situations get turned back on, because for all they know, you're going to go off to Bermuda with the money. And then, and no one's gotten their stuff. And, and this is ebooks again, like this isn't something no one even knows about. So I forget, I get on the plane, I get home, and it's working again. And, call him the next morning, and he basically says, I don't know what happened. Someone in that company must have known who you were. And so, the thought was that there was the Tidbits reader in that merchant account company who was like, this is Adam and Tonya. They're not going to Bermuda. So
it wasn't. So there's a little bit more on that. So what it was he said there was someone in Bellevue.
Yes, that's right. They were headquartered in Bellevue, Washington,
who had gotten it turned on. And we used to live very close to Bellevue, Washington for the 10-year period that we lived out in the Seattle area. And so we think there must have been someone, like Adam said, who could vouch for us in some way. So, but we got lucky, but the registers kept rolling in. And at some point, I think it was several weeks later, we had a call with Joe, and Joe was kind of like, I think I could write more books for you.
Yes.
Can I write more? Can I write more?
That's right. That's right.
And we're like, oh, well, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Because we just, we really hadn't planned this. but
it really was just, like, we'll just do these 4, to start with. And that's when we really got into we could just do more and more and more. And we did. I forget, Joe probably knows what he's up to, but, I think when we stopped, when we sold the business to Joe in 2017, after 14 years, what was it, Tonya? I think we decided we'd done 125 individual titles or something like that.
Something like that.
It was a lot.
it's well over 200 by now. I would have to go
yeah.
look up the number, but yeah. And
so a lot of questions here that I'd like to know. What did this do to your, because all of you were accomplished authors or had relationships with the publishers, the established publishers. What did this do to your relationship with them? Were they cheering you on? Were they saying, "Oh my God, you're going to put us out of business"?
No, Peach Pit was very nice. They were always terribly nice.
They were. I don't think
anyone was saying we were going to put them out of business, though.
No, not like that. But I think they were like cheering for us and supportive, but also like a little terrified, because we had really cracked a huge problem that publishers like Peach Pit were having. Their authors literally could not write fast enough to complete their books by the deadlines, which were dictated by the software companies, because the book had to be on the shelf when the software shipped, which is really hard. And the book had to be wide. It had to be thick. So when it was on the shelf, spine out, the title, stood out. And the software companies were starting to turn things over faster and faster and faster. And it was just a race to death. And we had solved it. And we were just the first. I mean, everyone does. I mean, if we even have ebooks, do we even have books anymore?
No. See, that's the thing is we outlasted them. I mean, Joe outlasted them, but Peach Pit's gone. O'Reilly basically doesn't do books. All of the other MacBook publishers basically gone. There is no more computer book market in print. Just doesn't exist. And I mean the realization we had very early on. I don't remember how long it took us to do an update, Joe. But we realized that we could turn an update around. I mean, by the time we got good. I mean, we got really good.
Well,
so if we need to do something really small, like we could do it in hours. No, hours. Yeah. I mean, literally hours. Anything more substantive, weeks.
I had this whole checklist because like the books had versions and copyright dates and things. So I had this whole checklist to make sure that we got the version right, because the version had to be correct in like 3 different places in the book, and it had to be correct in the like secret URL and all these, it had to be correct on the website. So I just did this huge checklist to put out a quick update, like every last thing that had to be done. Oh, besides, writing the update and editing.
Those little things.
But the updates were an absolutely brilliant approach. And to be fair, let's see if I have one here. There was I don't think I have one, but the Macintosh Bible actually did this way back when, where you would get the book, and I don't think I have any print ones, but you could get these little pamphlet updates to them because the books were just too big, and it never caught on anywhere else. It never really worked for print books, but it was something that we did in a big way. Bible. You got the Panther one, yeah.
And see how thick they had to make it so that it would stand out on the shelf.
Yeah, just crazy. And so between the updates and the speed with which we could put them out, it was huge. It just made all the difference.
I want to say that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No.
I want to say from the author's point of view too. I've written a bunch of those, big thick books. And you write something that's 600, 900 pages long, and it costs whatever, $30, $40. The author is going to get like $1, ish. They're by the time everything is discounted by everybody in the whole chain, and the publisher takes their cut, and if you have an agent, the agent takes their cut, and blah, 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 you might get $1. And most tech books never even earned out their advances, so the dollar itself is kind of even hypothetical. So what I thought from the author's point of view was actually huge, like revolutionary, was Adam and Tonya's idea that no, we're going to sell the books for a tiny fraction of what those big thick paper books sell for, but we're also going to give authors 50% of the profits. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that if I write like a 50-page book on upgrading to Panther, it sells for $5, then I'm going to get $2.50-ish or a little bit less after the transaction fees. I'm going to get like more than $2 for this. Whereas when I spend 6 months writing a gigantic book, I only get $1 for that. Like, that was crazy to me. That was nutso. I had just never encountered anything like that. And boy, did that help. I mean, I know it not just me, but helped all of you. That was huge.
It was just one of those things that what we realized, because a part of what made Take Control possible was, by that time, let's see, my first book I'd written in, I guess I've been writing books for 10 years. My first book was in 93. So 93 to 2003. And so I had, I had all these into about there on the shelf. And so I had really worked with a bunch of publishers and I'd done all the contracts, and I knew really well how the finances worked and every which way. And so, when Joe talks about $1, the book was 40, but the bookstores paid 20. And the author got a percentage based on the selling price, the 20. And so if you got 10% of the 20, maybe you were getting $2, but really that was, probably it probably wasn't really 20. It was probably something else because they bought it in discount or blah, blah, blah. There were returns.
Yeah, the returns. Don't forget the returns.
Returns killed people.
Back in case of returns.
Yes. So what we realized is we could simplify this hugely because we didn't have this inventory. We weren't going to ever have returns, all that. We could just say the author is the most important person in this project. Like, they should get half. It's as simple as that. And that made it, hugely more lucrative for the authors, while not really hurting us as the publishers, because we were still making a bunch. We were making the other half. I mean, we had to pay the editors and whatnot, but that wasn't the end of the world. So, so it really made a difference to rethink the entire business model along those lines.
Well, and of course, we were decades ahead of our time because we also had a completely distributed workforce that was 100% remote. Right.
And then
so Adam and I are married, right? So we actually share office building, as it were. He's just over
behind
there.
the closet.
But the point being that we didn't have office space to pay for, or miscellaneous production people. We didn't really have legal fees, just all the janitorial staff, all those kinds of things that you would normally have. We just didn't have, and we were just. I think everyone who's worked on Take Control over the years, certainly the vast majority of us were very, very early on the internet, people who literally started to use the internet, before the web existed, kinds of people. So we were very comfortable with it. And we were always trying all these novel, video conferencing solutions, which never worked very well, but man, did we try them. So our costs, and of course we weren't printing onto paper and delivering things with UPS trucks and all that. So our costs were just so much less than a traditional publisher would have been.
Okay, so boy, I want to make sure though that we're very clear here. One thing that's always been a hallmark of Take Control books is the quality of the writing. And not just because of the authors, because I'm sure somewhere somebody thought, oh, ebooks. Okay, so I'm going to get a PDF, and that was put together in Word, and hit print, and then saved a PDF, and that's it. And you all went above and beyond to create a workflow, and as a result, a final product that was much more sophisticated, and was for the time, it was unbelievably sophisticated.
Again, the thing that we had was 10 years of publishing experience. In terms of I had written books for 10 years. Tonya had edited and written her own books for 10 years. And, Joe's first book was about Nicest Writer, way back when. So from a pure like creating content standpoint, we were all professionals. We'd done this multiple times. We knew how to write. We knew the value of good editing. We knew that things had to be proofread as well as edited, like all of those kinds of things. But I do think that, and this may be a little bit of our age, that those of us who kind of came into the industry as very young people in the late 80s, early 90s, we were pretty clear that we needed to pretend to be professional because we weren't. We were 22, we were 23. We were not professionals. We were kids playing at this stuff when we started. And so, we always tried to put on that professional face and, pretend that we knew what we were doing. Nowadays, it's much more I got the screaming baby in the corner, but I'm still here doing my, my internet stuff. We would never in a million years have done that or put out something that seemed amateurish. Like that was anathema to us. And so I think that there was always that incredibly high bar that we set. And, I think all three of us, know that each of us has our own little thing about like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we have to go fix this stupid little thing because it's wrong. And we cannot put a book out with this wrong thing in it, and I'm sorry, it's now 2 more hours of work for everybody.
We also had different ideas of what wrong was. I remember in the early days, all of the authors and editors, it was like this club, and we had this mailing list, the Control Freaks mailing list. It was extremely active, and everybody would weigh in about everything. We had long, spirited discussions, sometimes heated disagreements about things that today we go, who even cares? But whether it was a question of style or it was some, intricacy of technology or how you do a very specific thing in a PDF or whatever the thing was, everybody wanted to weigh in and have their opinion. And what was great about that process, it was trying at times, but what was great about it was that we all learned so much.
Yes.
Because like Glenn would know a thing that nobody else would know. And we're like, oh, and then Kirk would know a thing and Jeff Carlson would know a thing. Like everybody would have their own experiences to bring to bear. And even though we disagreed about some stuff, that group input on the process and on the editing and on the like technical review and things like that made everybody's books so much better.
I'd forgotten about this until you just said the tech review. We used this service called Quick Topic Document Review, where we could put up basically a draft of a book as a huge web page, and you could leave a comment on each paragraph. And what and it wasn't required, but basically every book that went out, we had a quick topic pass, and a bunch of the authors would go through and do that. And so, that was part of it. Was we had the best possible peer tech review that any book could ever have, because it was, these 5 other, high-end authors. And so that made all the difference for that kind of stuff. And Quick Topic went away a long time ago, but that sort of stuff, that was powerful.
Well, I don't think we had Google Docs. Certainly not initially.
No.
Like we probably we wouldn't have needed Quick Topic if we'd had the multi-user, everybody can get in there at the same time thing. That was Quick Topic was unique in offering that at the time. I love the way Joe described that. I have a job currently where I work at Cornell University, and I work at an institute, and I'm the editor. And
The
it's a
editor.
little, yes,
There's only
it's
one.
It's a little lonely because when I put a semicolon somewhere or whatever it is I do, everyone just is like, wow, that's great. And I'm like, well, I hope so, but like, could we have some discussion? because there was always it was just always a lot of very very intelligent people who really cared about the product putting their heads together, and it's really fantastic for pulling out the best.
And it's a bunch of people who do have a little bit of that XKCD, kind of mentality of, but there's something wrong on the internet.
Right.
Could not let it go, which is good. That's good.
Well,
not complaining.
That's the thing that strikes me here is the amount of ownership that everybody in the process, even though it was Adam and Tonya's project initially, that Joe took, and all the commentary you're talking about from all the other authors, that everybody. I don't know, maybe it just is hindsight, but it seems like everybody recognized that they were involved with something game-changing, but also something that was going to have their names on it, so they cared a great deal about it.
It was all a whole lot of rising tide floats all boats. You knew that if you contributed, comments on one person's quick topic, they'd come and do it to yours. And so we all knew that was how we got better. We just kept doing good stuff. And so
I want to give
much
Joe,
more collaborative.
I want to give Joe credit for something. So after the first couple books came out, we started looking, and we could see that Joe's book was really selling very well. And there were samples and things. And so I'm like, well, why is Joe's book better? Right? Probably lots of reasons. But Joe had this notion that the book should have a quick start. I don't even know if we called it that then. And I'm going to hold this up, and probably nobody can even see it. But hopefully what you can see is that there are some bold headings and some other things that are not bold. But the point here is that for better or for worse, Joe had introduced the notion that the whole thing, everything that you need to do in the whole book, should be laid out in just a page or two with the high level points that you need to know to start quickly. And then we can link from that quick start area to the part of the book that elaborates on this particular topic. And I decided that was probably a key part of why Joe's book was selling well. And I made the other authors put those into their books.
And then later I came to sort of regret that, but yeah.
The one of the things that that I kind of enjoyed about the whole process is that these were true hypertexts, and this was actually what my degree in Cornell was in. Is hypertextual fiction, admittedly, but this was not fiction. But it was still sort of that opportunity to really see how you could create multiple paths through the book, and that's what the quick starts were. Is they offered you different paths through the book, and that was important because even though these weren't huge, there was still that level of I know this stuff. I just need this little bit at the end, and you could just go through the table of contents, and that would tell you stuff. But the quick start was a more narrative approach to different jumping off points within the book, and I thought that was tremendously successful. For a lot of them, we did run into a couple of books where it's like, wow, that just didn't quite work for them. We don't, it's like didn't make sense, and we don't know why. But we've tried a lot of different things over the years, and having the a fully linked table of contents, having the fully linked, having the bookmarks in the sidebar, having the quick start, and really quite a lot of linking within the book, so you could bounce around to the appropriate spots. That was the promise of hypertext, and we made it happen in a real way. It was not easy. I mean, the number of major apps that we went. Well, I guess it was only really 3. We started with Word, we went to Pages, and then we switched to Nicest Writer, and that's where you're still at. But we had significant technology jumps to make this happen.
Yeah.
And that's, well, Adam, that's kind of what I was referring to when I said these are not just PDFs that were slapped together. They were something that I'm not quite ready to say unlike anything anyone had ever seen before, because we had seen the web and we had seen hypertext before that, but this just felt completely different. And
they were not that no one had done it, but no one had done it like consistently.
They were ebook first. Like, yeah, you can print them. People printed them. I've got a printout here of one. That's fine. You're allowed to print them, but it's a peripheral side case. The main case is people who want to read it on their screen, and people who are excited that they can click around in it, and who are excited that we've got lots of live URLs in them that, you click it and it's like, okay, you want to do this, go download this software. And we've got a link right in there for how to download the software. And so it was always ebook first. And so a lot of other publishers were, and I think actually still are, kind of struggling with okay, we got this piece of paper and we'd like to have kind of a digital component. Maybe we're going to stick a QR code on it, right? So they're paper first, but we were always e first. And so that also caused, I definitely did some thinking, okay, well, if we don't care about the paper, or if we only care a little tiny bit, what can we do differently? What does that allow? And so it just was a completely different mindset.
And like, there is a moment in our production process when we have our word processor and we create a PDF from that. But I would never in a million years sell that PDF. After I do that, I have to go through 4 other apps and about a dozen other steps to make a PDF that meets my minimum standards of okayness. Then we have another whole separate process we go through to make the EPUB version for, Apple Books and whatever, and which has its own challenges. So, so as Adam and Tonya both basically said, yeah, we sweat the small stuff.
So why didn't you go? I mean, look, I can completely understand there's some practical applications here, but why didn't you build the 600-page books in ebooks? Why did you decide to go with the 50-page ebook, the 60-page ebook?
Too hard.
Was that
It would have never finished.
You never finish. And it's just too much. I mean, that was the whole point with the updates is that you could finish, and you might have to do an update in a month or 2 months, and you could just do that. If you had 600 pages, you would have so much to update. You'd be in this constant cycle of never really releasing. That there really are some sweet spots. We actually have a couple of books. Like, how big is Michael's Pages book now, Joe?
Oh my God. It's 377 pages long.
Right.
It's ridiculous. I keep telling authors, would you please write less? We want shorter book. We don't want 300-page books. Please, no. Stop doing it.
And it takes him like 2 years to come up with a new version.
Yeah, it's too much.
Because it's just so hard. And so
by the time you even finish writing a 100-page book and you give it to your editor, the software may have updated. So now your editor's testing it on a newer version, and they're like, I hate to tell you this, but 6 of the icons on the toolbar have changed, so you got to redo all your screenshots. I mean, you got to get these things out. You only have like 24 hours after you ship the thing before something's not going to be right in it, right? So
there's actually, I mean, we've never done a book about things like Google Docs or Gmail or things where like you just have no idea when it's going to change, and it could change weekly, because that's I mean, like, at least with software, you kind of know there's a version, and you can tell, okay, we've got a line in the sand until the next version. But the truly online software where it just almost streams and the updates just keep coming all the time, it's not possible. I mean, you'd have to draw your own lines in the sand and then just be randomly out of date. Plus, they don't ever tell you what's changed, so there's no chance you'd be in this infinite cycle of looking for new stuff. So again, that was something which just doesn't quite lend itself to even the speed of the ebooks.
Okay, so and that's kind of obvious. And you bring up a great point, though, especially with some of the online stuff. I feel like the companies who are doing the changes don't even document it at times, let alone tell us as
Not at
users.
all. Documentation is for schmucks. Come on.
Yeah, yeah, just go in there and mess around with it. So how did you all decide, though, what topics? I mean, look, some of the Apple topics were obvious, but you eventually expanded out a little bit into non-Apple published things. I'm not sure what the best way, but third party, I guess, third party apps. How did you decide which ones to cover and which ones not? Was it just a matter of what you thought was popular, or who you could get to write a credible book about it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I remember in the very early days, the Take Control authors were like, okay, now that we have a few books out, this process is working. Everybody's like, okay, what can we do? Like, I want to write a book about 18th century Italian opera. I want to write a book about bicycle repair. And everybody had like all these ideas. And from time to time, we would experiment with something that not only wasn't Apple specific, but maybe it wasn't even really about technology, sort of technology adjacent. I mean, I wrote, as previously discussed, the infamous Take Control Thanksgiving Dinner. Still a great book, but like nobody in our audience wanted it. We had a book on buying a cheap plane ticket. Book
written
on
by a 16-year-old.
Written by a 16-year-old, yeah.
Who's really good.
yeah. So we had these books on things that were a little bit outside the mold. And it turned out that every time we did something that wasn't just like the thing that the Tidbits audience, the Apple fans, were dying for, very few people cared. And however good of a book we might have been able to make about something, we also have to be able to sell it. And for reasons we could take another whole hour to talk about, it's very, very difficult for us to access the audience of people that are interested in 18th century Italian opera. Even if we had the best book about it ever, finding enough of those people to buy that book that it would make everybody enough money, it's just not going to happen. So although, we did, there were things like, well, here's a book that covers both the Mac and the Windows version of this app. There were some times when we sort of, expanded beyond the purely Apple stuff. We never did a book that was strictly about the Windows version of something or the Android version of something. It always at least accommodated the Apple ecosystem if it wasn't exclusively about that. But that was just a function of like, what are we capable of selling books on to the people that would find out about them? And that's what worked for us.
Well, so that just points right back to the fact that you all did this at exactly the right time with exactly the right audience to have it be such a major success. I mean, yeah, you're right, Joe. The 18th century Italian opera audience was not probably plugged in technologically, especially at that time. So, yeah, it's just right place, right time, right ideas, and it all came together.
I mean, that's the case with so many things. I mean, the things that work, it's not that they were, and there's a lot. I mean, again, it's right place, right time. So there's the sort of a luck involved that, but there's also an incredible amount of hard work, and you need both of those things. I mean, you can put on all the work you want, but if you're writing Take Control Thanksgiving Dinner and trying to sell it to Mac people, it was a lot of fun, but wouldn't have been a business. So if we had said, oh, we're going to do cookbooks because that's where our passion lies, we probably wouldn't still be doing it. That would have gone away. So I think there is a lot of that kind of right stuff, right time. And, it was also at a time when books were still a thing. I mean, one of the things that we were hitting 6 years ago and when Joe took over and, he's been dealing with ever since is the fact that books as containers for knowledge are useful for a particular, frankly, demographic. It's an age group thing. Our son remains befuddled to this day that we earned a living and put him through college selling ebooks.
But I think ebooks should be having a comeback. I feel like more and more sites on the internet have just become
vinyl.
completely unusable.
But that's right. We're the vinyl of technology content.
That's right.
And I think that Joe should start to experience a strong resurgence of interest in younger demographics as they come to realize the value.
Adam, I want you to elaborate on that. Why does your son find ebooks so?
Oh, no one under the age of 40, maybe even 50, would even consider looking at a book for an answer to a technology problem. They would simply go to YouTube. Frankly, these days, I don't know how, but they would expect TikTok to like throw them the answer somehow, or, it just, they would do a web search and they'd move on. The problem, the thing that we were solving and the people we were addressing and still do is people who want to understand something. They don't just want that answer. They want to know how the app works, how to think about it, and what kind of strategies you as a user should employ around this topic. That we always said that with Take Control, you should be thinking as though, as an author, you should be explaining this to your friend. You're like, this is who you're like. You're helping this person. You're not gonna just tell your friend, oh yeah, click there. That's what YouTube does. YouTube says click there, and your answer is you got your answer to your problem. This is you want to upgrade to Sonoma. Okay, well here's what you should know, because like if you just go and click the button, it's not going to work for X, Y, and Z reasons, and you're going to come back to me and say, well, you don't have a Mac that's new enough, or you don't have enough free disk space, or whatever it is, or maybe you really shouldn't do that because you rely on this strange app that's still running, and you're still running Catalina.
Was I supposed to make a backup? Because
right. So it's Take Control is much more about the milieu. The foundation that you need to move forward with confidence and success. Whereas the way people think about technology these days is just tell me the answer. That's it. And in some ways it's just getting worse, right? I mean, the chat GPTs of the world, tell me the answer. I don't even care if it's right.
Adam, I know you have a heart out here, but I definitely want to get to the point to talk just a little bit about why you sold Take Control books to Joe. And he's done a great job and continued on. He's been on the show multiple times. We've talked about it so much. But what was the decision process there that you all, because you were still doing tidbits and you still continue to do tidbits?
I think, Tonya can actually answer this better and more so because, in fact, I think she was the one who was primarily the driver there, in the sense that we'd done it.
It's Joe's fault.
No, it's nobody's fault. Joe and I both turned 50, and Joe turned 50 in January, and he called Adam and I up around that time and said, as I recall, that he just felt like he needed a change. And he hoped that over the course of the next year, he would figure out what that would be. And it would probably mean he would be writing fewer Take Control titles. And I sort of thought, well, and Tristan, my son, was a senior in high school at that time. And I sort of thought, well, hey, I was sort of waiting for my 50th birthday to say something about that.
Tanya's birthday's in September, mine's in November, so we were a little bit behind.
And so various discussions ensued here in New York State between Adam and I don't even know what all Joe may have been thinking about, but we decided that the best thing to do would be to persuade Joe that he should take over as publisher of Take Control, which would allow Take Control to continue. It would give Joe an entirely new job title and things to think about. And it would free me up to have my midlife crisis more effectively and decide what was next.
Okay.
And by the way, I just want to like, while Adam's still here, I want to mention the fact that the last time the four of us were all together was back in 2017 when we all got on this show to announce, guess what?
We should go back and see what we said then.
Yeah. we might
But we don't look a day older.
We might have been lying then. I don't know. The story might have changed. I'm not sure.
I will make sure I have a link in the show notes to that show because it's still online. You can go back and see. But yeah, they called me and said, okay, we want to come on the show as a group and we have a surprise for you. Okay, fine. Great. And they came on and they said that we've sold Take Control to Joe. And I'm just sitting there completely baffled as to what happened here.
And
I mean, in some ways it's easier to look. It's easier to look at in retrospect almost, in that, when we had done Take Control for 14 years, right? So that was 2003 to 2017. That's a long time. And it's not like Tidbits, where Tidbits just kind of rolls because it's not that much to do every week. Take Control is these big chunks of stuff. You got to get out and do everything and then move on to the next big chunk of stuff. And I think, probably more so for, particularly for Tonya, and then Joe on all his titles, of course, that they were just kind of going through this incredible roller coaster nonstop. And, that was tiring. So that he was sort of time to, throw things up in the air and see where they fell down. But very much with the way
Joe ended up landing in Saskatchewan somehow.
Yeah, well,
in the end. So
all kinds of twists and turns. But I remember that call because, as far as I was concerned, from the time that I called you and said, look, I really need to find something else, until the time that you called me with this idea, I was planning on doing something else. I was geared up, ready to do another thing, and we had a phone call, and you're like, so we have this other. Can we just change that idea slightly? Instead of you not working on Take Control anymore, what if you did it all the time? and I remember I hadn't the slightest clue. That idea had never ever crossed my mind. It was just mind blowing. Like, what you want me to what? And how am I going to do that? And how am I going to afford that? And it was a matter of just I needed a brain transplant to even be able to. And
that was only a couple of weeks later. I remember this because Joe's birthday is in early January, the same day as our son's birthday, in fact. And Tonya and I were having the primary conversations. We'd gone up to Ottawa to skate on the Rideau Canal, and we were driving back from Ottawa. I remember having some of the conversations, in the car on our way back. So that's
we were talking
basically
about who
early
we could
February.
Take Control to who wouldn't run it into the ground.
Right.
And we went through a very long list of companies and friends, and none of them met got over the bar of probably will run it into the ground.
And all the companies would just want the lists. They weren't going to want the titles. They weren't going to treat the authors well, et cetera, et cetera. So so we just this was the win-win all round. And Joe's still standing, so I think we did okay.
Let us be honest about the fact that ups and downs have occurred. But we are still very much in the black, and it is a healthy business. Let's just say it is a healthy business, and we will continue to make changes. Honestly, look, we're not going to come back in another 20 years. Can we just say there's not going to be a 40-year Take Control anniversary, and we're all in our mid 70s. It's going to have to end in some way before then. But still, it's got life in it, and more new and interesting and exciting things are ahead.
Well, I'm honestly truly thrilled. Joe and I did a vast number of spreadsheets projecting every possible occurrence as far as how badly Take Control could do and how well it could do, and everywhere in between. And I think actually our projections for the first 2 or 3 years out were actually quite good. And I'm very thrilled that we did not cause Joe to go bankrupt by selling this to him. and that it is a viable business, and it makes me very happy when I see the books coming out and
Well, I still think it's one of the most highly regarded products in the at least in the Apple tech world, because of the authors, because of the quality, because of the care. And you've continued to address things that people want and need. And plus the fact it helps that there are such personalities involved as authors. I don't think that hurts at all. So it's something truly unique. And I just need to say congratulations to all three of you on 20 years, because Adam and Tonya built the foundation. Joe has taken it and run with it. And I'm guardedly optimistic we might be here at number 40.
See, that would
Dream
mean
on.
that I wouldn't get to retire. That would mean that I would still be working in 20 years.
Retirement is overrated, Joe.
Okay,
maybe not according to Joe. I don't know.
Maybe you can write a Take Control title about that.
Absolutely. Well, our demographic is heavily weighted towards senior citizens. So
they could give it to their kids as hints.
Right.
Okay, so Joe will be back later this week to introduce his new book, Take Control of Retirement.
Folks, this is a typical, brainstorming process.
Yeah.
So we need to talk just a little bit before Adam has to go about what you're doing for 20 years as a celebration.
Right. So around the time that this audio comes out, there will be a Tidbits article talking about stuff. There will also be an email that I send our customers, those who have opted in, obviously. And we're going to be, by now, the news will have been out, I think, that we're doing two things. One thing is, we are doing this crazy thing is we're rolling all our prices back to 2003 levels. Our first books were all $5 each. Of course, that was back when they were closer to 50 pages, not 300 pages. But anyway, we're rolling all our prices back to $5 for anything in our store for a limited time period, 2 or 3 days. And there will be details in the article that hasn't been written yet. So we have that going on. I think that will be very popular, very, very low prices. If you want to buy Josh's $5.99 Take Control of Notes, you can buy that for $5. If you want to buy one of our $15 books, you can buy that for $5. Everything's $5. Think something that would normally be $4, also $5. Also, and not because it's super popular and everybody needs it, but because it's this season, I'm going to give away a copy of Take Control of Thanksgiving Dinner to anyone who wants it. Yeah. So by the time you see this, there will be a new edition out, the first update to that book in 11 years. And everybody can just have it for free. It's going to be free from now until Thanksgiving 2023 in the US. And anybody who wants it can just have it. So just because that seemed like the seasonally appropriate thing to do. And then, of course, there will also be another episode or two of MacVoices featuring other special guests.
Yes, and I'm always hesitant to announce those things, Joe, because you never know what's going to happen. But we're planning on making this a Take Control kind of week here at MacVoices. So stay tuned, and you're going to want to watch every one of them because they're going to be as much fun as this interview has been. I guarantee you. Guys, thanks so much. Adam Engst, Tonya Engst, Joe Kissell, the past and present Take Control crew. Really appreciate everything you've done for me, for MacVoices. You've always supported my efforts, but especially for everything you've done for the community, all the great information and all the user group appearances, everything. You guys have been fantastic citizens of this community. Thank you.
And thank you, Chuck. You have been your unwavering support over all these years has also helped us a great deal, and we deeply appreciate that as well.
Indeed.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Good stuff all round.
Absolutely. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Again, this has become suddenly Take Control Week here at MacVoices. Look for more soon. Thanks for
Take control
watching.
of MacVoices. All right. Okay, now.
Yeah.
We've taken down Ecamm. What do we do next, Joe?
Yeah.
This sounds like a rebellion here. What?
Hey, that take control, that works for a whole lot of things, it turns out.
Yeah. Not all of them we can talk about on camera.
Well, folks, it's been fun.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for including me. I'm very touched. I'm absolutely touched. So,
all right.
We'll see you again in a few days.
Yes.
That's right. Now, until next time. Ciao.
Yeah. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.